So for this video, we're going to make a Minecraft style terrain just using a really simple script. So we're going to include some Perlin Noise, so the Mathf Perlin Noise. And we're not actually going to add textures or anything. We're just going to use the math function. So we're going to keep it pretty nice and simple here. And this is what the script is going to look like here. So just a map width, length, scale block. And we're kind of basing it off this idea of a Perlin texture and a grid. So how this is going to work is we're just going to add in the cubes, just like you would normally to make a grid. So we're going to go along the X and the Y with a for loop, and we're going to create this pattern. But we're also going to be going along this noise texture in order to grab the height. So we're going to be representing that on the up and down axis here in Unity. So we'll hop into the code just to see how that's going to play out. So we have our map width, map length, so that's how many cubes wide and long it's going to be. We have our scale, which is going to be how zoomed in you are on this texture. So if you change the scale, it's going to make the map kind of more jagged or more flat. And then we just have our block prefab, so whatever cube that you have, and you could add different textures to that as well. Okay, so we have one function here. It's just going to calculate the grid and spawn all of the blocks. So we're going to be doing we're going to go along two different axes. So as we go kind of left to right on this grid, as we're spawning cubes in, we're also going to go left to right on this imaginary texture in order to sample these little points. So these white points are like higher points. So you'd have a higher number like 1. So this goes between 0 and 1. And the black spots are going to be like the number 0. So gray would be somewhere in between. And that's all this Perlin Noise texture is going to give us, is between 0 and 1. So we're going from left to right here. We're going to go left to right here in order to get the height at the same time. So that's what this is doing here. The first part of the for loop is we're just going along that width, and we're just increasing it by 1 every time so that our cubes are spaced out. And every time we do that, we're going to go down and add these vertical ones as well. So that's what this nested loop part is. So here we're going along the length, which is up and down, but we're also doing that along the texture here so that it's consistent. Okay, so you can see we're increasing the texture X plus the scale, and we're also increasing width, and then we're increasing the length and the texture Y plus the scale. So when we get that sample, what this is doing here is it's basically picking a point on this texture, which we're kind of moving uniformly, and it's going to give us a number between 0 and 1, like I said before. So that's not really useful. We want our cubes to be moved. If we go to our block here, we want that to kind of snap up a bit, right? We want it in units of 1. We don't want to have it go up just a little bit, like 0.3 or something. So how we're going to change that is we're just going to multiply it by 10. And that's going to give us, it just multiplying by 10, we'll just move the decimal over. So we always get a whole number. And then in order to just shave off all the decimal points like that, we're just going to convert it into an integer. So that's all we're doing here. Just multiply by 10 and then convert to an int. And that is going to give you the first decimal place as a whole number. So that's that's a better height. So that way the cube is going to be maybe 1 unit high, like 9 units high, 8 units high, something like that. So you'll actually see it move instead of just a tiny bit with that low decimal. So once we have our height, we're just going to instantiate the block. We're going to do it the width and the length, which are increasing in our loops. And then we're going to use the height that we just gained based on where we are on that texture. So that is going to create our little terrain here. I'm going to plot them all out for us. And yeah, if we wanted to have this completely full. So right now there's only one block on the terrain, right? You can't go any further down. So this isn't very optimized, but what you can do is just say, I want to block down here, 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 and just kind of flatten it out. So I've just done a few lines of code here to make that happen. Right, so let's say the block is placed at 9. While 9 is greater than or equal to 0, it's just going to keep looping through. So it'll say put 1 at 8, and then put 1 at 7, put 1 at 6, 5, right till we get to 0, and then it'll break out. So that's all this little bit of code is doing here, is it's just placing blocks underneath that initial block once it's determined the height. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Just a simple little way to make some Unity style terrain. Not too complex, but again, not very optimized. So once you get too many cubes on the screen, it might start to freeze up. But yeah, thanks for watching.